Beyblade, Beyblade, let it rip. Let's fight in every battle. Face off, it's been the metal. No back or down now. No place for backing down. Beyblade, Beyblade, let it rip. Beyblade, Beyblade, let it rip. Spin out, come play now. Brave hearts of power. Right to the top, yeah. We're never giving up. Here comes Metal Fury. Let's go, Beyblade, let it rip. Metal Fury, let it rip. Beyblade, Beyblade, let it rip. This is it, get a grip, let it rip.
Hey physics! Nick here! Look back into your childhood, where you were not overloaded with work, where you're not spending 8 hours a day on average on your devices. Back to those moments of full whimsy and joy. Picture this. 4th grade, recess. You're walking around, wondering on what to do. And all of a sudden, at the corner of your ear, you hear some kids screaming like lunatics, "Go Pegasus! Go El Drago!" And you're just so confused on what's happening. So you walk over there, and you see 20 kids huddled, screaming, chanting like it's a sports event. At the center of it all is just one plastic stadium, 2 metal fights, fighting, clashing, and you see them clashing and clashing. And all of a sudden, this fiery spirit inside of you just erupts, and you are just out of words, literally. It's such a special moment, and you want to be the best there ever was. But realistically, that was like 10 years ago. Right now, you're just riddled with responsibilities and adult things. But that doesn't matter, even if it's just for a moment. We can bring that joy, those youthful times back. That's what we want to do. But before we even get into those fun times, we have to go back to where it all begins, the construction of the Beyblade.
What do you remember about Beyblades? What was your playstyle? Did you try and emulate the blades of the main characters, or do your own unique thing? Regardless of what you picked, they have the potential to make almost infinite unique combinations with only 5 segments, all designed to achieve different playstyles through physics alone. Let's start at the bottom of this. The performance tip. The rubber or plastic at the bottom of every Beyblade holds secret to its movement. It uses friction, but force that counteracts its movement to keep it from slipping over and falling down. It's kind of like how our shoes work. When we walk, friction is what helps us actually move and not just fall on our face. This is like the shoes for the Beyblade, what helps it move around, keep rotating, and stay stable while rotating. Moving up now, we've got the tracks of the Beyblades, the height pretty much of the Beyblades, and this is pretty important to determining the center of mass of the Beyblades. This plays a big role in determining how long it keeps rotating, and also its unique balance point. Of course, balancing is important for not falling over, the whole point of Beyblades. This is key to maintaining stability and the ability to withstand hits from other Beyblades, not just falling over after one little collision. This is the main thing responsible for the momentum and the spin time of every Beyblade through weight distribution. Now for the coolest part, the fusion wheels and energy ring of the Beyblades. These hold most of the mass of the Beyblade, which, as you know, is integral for maintaining rotational momentum, which is what keeps it spinning. It also helps it maintain its rotation while being hit. The mass can be greater to emphasize better defense at the cost of less endurance, or it can be lesser so you can spin around for longer, but you will be more easy to knock over because you'll be less stable in your rotations. And the energy ring is important for the actual launching of the Beyblade. These are launched with a little gadget which has little gears on it. When you put this in, these little things right here attach to the spinner. You rip it out, and the cord of this little gears spins the Beyblade so fast that it launches onto it and starts spinning around on the arena. Lastly, the final nail in the coffin, the face of the Beyblade itself, the face bolt. This is a screw that keeps every other part together against every collision and every rotation. So now you know all the main parts of every Beyblade, or at least your average Beyblade, because you'll notice that each one looks and plays a bit different. Why is this? Well, that's the beauty of Beyblades. Just little changes in each little component can lead to big changes in gameplay for each Beyblade. Let's say you want a Beyblade that has high endurance to outlast all your opponents. What you're going to want is a very thin performance tip that minimizes contact with the ground, so unless your rotational acceleration is lost to friction. So you'll be spinning for more because you have more rotational energy to keep your Beyblade spinning. However, this comes at the cost of movement because you're touching less of the ground with your performance tip. Let's say you want a Beyblade of high endurance to outlast all your opponents. You want to keep spinning and not do much. Well, you can do that with a very thin performance tip. You have less contact with the ground, so that means that less of your rotational acceleration is lost to friction, so you'll spin for even longer. However, this means that you won't be moving that much because, as I said before, less stuff is touching the ground, so of course you move around way less, because there'll be less friction acting upon you, and that's the force that involves movement of the Beyblade across the arena. However, let's say it's on your speed. You want to move around as you play the game. That's cool. You can have an attack type. As you can see, much more contact with the ground in this one. Of course, more friction going against the movement of the Beyblade is going to move around much more. However, with that comes a detriment to you. More friction means that you lose more rotational acceleration over time, therefore you spin for much, much less time than you would as a stamina type.
While watching Beyblades spin is fun, we never really questioned why they stay upright even though they fall over when they're stationary. The real reason why this happens is angular momentum, which is pretty much the same as linear momentum in physics terms, but first we have to talk about what it really is. So it's pretty much the object's ability to resist change because it's spinning. We may have all experienced this before from fidget spinners. I remember when I was a kid I used to spin them really fast, and if I tried to tilt them on their axis really fast, it was harder than when they were stationary. So that was the first example of angular momentum I could really think of. So now let's dive into the physics of it, and we can see that L, the angular momentum, is just the angular mass times angular velocity, which is pretty similar to just our linear momentum, which is straight up mass times velocity. Now we get the angular mass of an object by its the density, or not density, like.
I'm now going to talk more in depth about the physics that act upon the Beyblades, starting with conservation of energy. Before our epic battle commences, there's 3 components in total that launch a successful Beyblade. There's the bay itself, which you can see right here, the ripcord, and the launcher itself. The launcher is comprised of a gear mechanism, and how it works, you insert the ripcord into the launcher until you can't push it anymore. Then you have the little Beyblade, you turn around until it clicks, and then you're set up. And then you hold the launcher steady, and you just pull the ripcord as hard as you can. And that is what will set the Beyblade in motion. And once it's rotating, you're giving the Beyblade rotational kinetic energy. And the total energy of the system is the potential energy from your arm and the ripcord, which all just transfers to the Beyblade itself. And the energy is constant from the moment it launches off the launcher to it touches the stadium. That's when it starts losing energy via like heat, sound, and other energies. And this is our equation. The total energy is equal to 1/2 moment of inertia times angular velocity squared. And we have some heat and sound losses as I just mentioned beforehand. For example, if we have a heavier Beyblade with a large inertia, it keeps spinning for longer, which means it's resisting, it resists slowing down more. And also, energy transfer during the fight, while they collide, they both lose and gain energy at the same time. And that would go on indefinitely if there were no other external forces, but we have friction and other air resistance, etc., which is what ultimately causes the fight to end. That's it.
Hooray!
Now onto friction. Friction appears between the performance tip and the stadium, and when the two Beyblades collide. There are two types of tips. We have the rubber, where there's much higher friction, meaning it slows down faster, but it grips harder into the stadium as more powerful attacks. And the other type of tip is plastic, which has lower friction and can slip easier, but it can last longer on the stadium. The friction converts the kinetic energy to heat over time. That is why it stops spinning. If it was like a perfect scenario, it would keep on spinning forever. And that's it. That's it. Now onto rotational energy. This is the equation. The rotational energy is equal to 1/2 moment of inertia, angular velocity squared. Notice that it's almost the same equation as the conservation of energy section. That is because the main energy of the Beyblade is rotational energy. Like the other part is pretty insignificant, so we can kind of ignore that. Now, onto the last force, which I'm going to be talking about, is contact forces. Here we have these following equations. Impulse is equal to force times change in time, which is equal to change in momentum. Torque times change in time, which is equal to change in linear momentum. And linear momentum is equal to moment of inertia times angular velocity. And this is actually the most epic part. It's like that. You feel your soul get into the fight when you hear the metals clack. Right here, see they're both rotating and they're hitting each other. That's like the super epic part. And during this fight, the large contact forces on each bay act for short periods of time because they don't really like stick together and spin towards each other. Just hit and bounce away. And one of the three following scenarios can happen when they clash. They can either transfer spin, which causes them to slow down. They can knock one off balance or even off the entire stadium, like off of the entire stadium. Or it can change the tilt angle of the Beyblades, which can cause them to topple over.